Welcome to Patty's Place, a place where we're going to talk about grief, dementia, and caregiving. I'm your host, Lisa. I named this podcast in honor of my mom, Pat, who passed away from dementia about 2.5 years ago. So hopefully I want this place to be a place where you don't feel alone and you can find some good resources to help you through this difficult time. So grab your cup of coffee, your cup of tea, or if you're having that really bad day, your glass of wine, and let's get talking. Today I'm really excited. Our guest is Jill Agin. She's the founder of For Better Minds and a passionate advocate for helping people protect and improve brain health as they age. She specializes in CST, which is Cognitive Stimulation Therapy. It's an evidence-based, non-drug approach shown to improve cognitive confidence, communication, and quality of life for people living with mild cognitive impairment and early-stage dementia. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yes, I'm very excited about this because brain health is very important. Very, very important. So just tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get interested in working with this particular field?
Well, I've worked with people living with dementia now for over 10 years. And I used to own a home healthcare business where I placed healthcare aides and nurses in people's homes. So kind of one-on-one care. And we were always looking for innovative solutions. We're always looking for, tips and new ways to give really good care. And in about 2015, I was introduced to CST. I think I discovered it at a conference, and I was really taken by it. And I always kept it in mind as something I wanted to do. And then I tried it out eventually. And then I stopped with my home care business in 2022 and decided to do CST full time. I just thought it was such a compelling service. It is evidence-based, like you said. So what that means for people who don't know, it means it's scientifically proven.
Okay.
So the program that I use has been around for 25 years, and it is really well trialed. And the evidence for it to improve people's cognition is really there. And I thought it was so compelling, and it's just a wonderful program.
So, and as you work with the older adults, and we always face that, everyone always is worried the minute they forget something, like, oh God, it's dementia. But you also, you said you work with healthy seniors who want to stay sharp. So what have you learned about aging that most people misunderstand?
I think aging in general, that most people understand, is that in order to age well, it's an active process. So we really need to work hard at it. And if we take it passively and just allow it to happen, we're probably not going to age as well as we hoped.
Okay.
So I think in aging well, we really need to look at our diet and our exercise levels.
Okay.
There are some really basic things. We have to be very intentional about aging well and, keep our muscle mass, keep exercising, and eat a good diet. And I think that's the most misunderstood thing. I honestly do, that we really need to come together and understand that we have to do a lot of things for ourselves. It's going to be intentional, and it's going to take a lot of energy and time, and we need to invest in our own health in order to age well.
Okay. So why do you think that the cognitive stimulation therapy is still not widely known?
Well, that's a good question. And I often, ever since I started with this, I have thought about that. Why is this not widely known? I think from the practical approach from this is that it was created by academics at the University of London in England. And so academics don't really have a marketing budget.
This is true.
Right. And so they are just producing papers and they do have conferences, but they are not, they don't have money to advertise it to the wider society. And I often think, let's just say if it was a service that was being delivered maybe by a large pharmaceutical company, we'd all probably know about it because they do have the budget to advertise and let people know. And then I think maybe just, on the ground level, it's possible that because it's a non-pharmacological approach, that
Mm-hmm.
there are, that it may get mixed in or lost in the mix of non-pharmacological approaches that aren't effective. And then maybe, at least um, in some areas, there would be things like staffing constraints. Like I know some OTs that know about CST, but they can't do it in their workplace.
So,
Mhm.
so for those of us who aren't familiar with it, what exactly is CST?
Good. So, cognitive stimulation therapy. So, it's a program that was created for people with mild cognitive impairment or early to mid stage dementia.
Okay.
So, it was created to relieve the symptoms of mild cognitive impairment and early dementia. And what the program looks like I said, it's been trialed a lot, is that it is 7 weeks
Okay.
and you meet with a facilitator. So, like myself, twice a week. And the the facilitator walks the person through different activities that will stimulate their mind, so stimulate their thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The basis of the therapy is to get the person to generate ideas and come up with opinions and have their minds stimulated. So it's a really wonderful program in that there's no right or wrong answer, and it's not testing and it's not quizzing.
Okay.
And instead, it's generating ideas and generating opinions, and in a very safe space with an effective listener.
So it's
Hmm.
kind of like you're having a conversation with the
Yes,
person.
absolutely. It's a conversation-based therapy. Hmm.
Okay. And that
Hmm.
that doesn't sound scary either, you know,
Hmm.
because I
Yeah.
know with my mom's particular case, she refused to get diagnosed. She,
Hmm.
I knew that she had some issues and stuff, and she would not go. She wouldn't even take the little test, like the 10-question test. She just wouldn't answer the doctor
Hmm.
with it till it got to be, too far along. So this could be something for somebody that if they notice, like you said, it's mild, that they might be able to help them. Granted, there's no cure for dementia, but might help them have a little bit more lucid moments longer.
Hmm. Hmm. It also helps with so the things that it has been proven to help with are, memory, language fluency, word finding, executive function,
Okay.
following directions. Another big one is oral comprehension. So
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever noticed sometimes when you're speaking to older people that they don't have hearing impairment, so they can hear, but they might ask you a couple of times for you to repeat yourself, so they
Mm-hmm.
didn't quite get it. So that it
Okay.
really helps with that as well. It really helps with confidence with people speaking. And I see in the first couple sessions, so like if the program is 7 weeks and we meet twice a week, so it's kind of 14 sessions. And I can really see with people who aren't used to speaking, people aren't used to having an engaging conversation, or for people who, just are really understimulated and no one has ever asked them a question in a
Mm-hmm.
long time. It takes them a couple sessions. I can really see their confidence building, and it takes them a couple of sessions in order to organize their thoughts and come up with a coherent answer. And even in the first two sessions, people will pause for a long time, just coming up with, what do I actually think about this topic? Okay. The facilitator is asking me a question. I could be asking, say, about, just about food or about
Mm-hmm.
using money and I'll just say, so what do you think of that?
So this is even good for somebody who um, may not necessarily have the mild cognitive impairment, but just maybe for older people, because they always say that socialization is very important to aging as well, too, and for cognitive abilities for it. So that could help with them if they're just like maybe feeling mentally slower or less engaged or, like you said, understimulated.
Absolutely. So, even though this program was created for people with MCI and early dementia,
Mm-hmm.
they trialed it also with people who did not have cognitive decline, and
Mm-hmm.
they had incredible improvements. Because I think if you don't have cognitive decline, your brain is still working normally, or at least still working really well.
Mm-hmm.
And it has that plasticity, that ability to change and respond to a therapy. So people have had really wonderful improvements in their cognition. And they really enjoy it as well. I mean, someone who doesn't have cognitive decline would then be able to just really pull back on memories and their former experiences in answering the questions. Mhm.
So, why do you think so many people underestimate the power of structured mental stimulation?
Well, that's also really good to ponder. I think possibly one, because we don't know. We're just coming up with this now,
Mm-hmm.
really, about, in the last 5 or 6 years, there's been just so much research published
Mm-hmm.
on dementia and how to prevent it and how to slow it. And we're only really now coming to see that cognitive stimulation or exercising our minds is just as important or more than exercising their bodies. So that's one thing. We're just starting to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But also, too, maybe because, we're still in a society where we kind of underestimate structured physical exercise, right? So
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
make an appointment, if you go all in and hire a personal trainer that's going to turn up, or you're going to have an appointment with them, there's the accountability there of there's a human being waiting for me, so I'm going to turn up at the appointment. And then that personal trainer probably has an hour of planned activities and exercises for the person, and they're going to stick to it, and they're going to finish it. They're going to follow through, and they're going to finish it. And that's the same thing with me with cognitive stimulation therapy. So when someone makes an appointment with me, I have an hour of planned activities, and they're going to turn up, and I'm going to turn up, and we're going to follow through and do the full hour, and it's going to be great. So I think it's really rare when you think of cognitive engagement, or you think about, being interested in something and exercising your mind. How often do we do that even in everyday life, say for more than 3 or 4 minutes?
That's true. So,
Mhm.
what would be some examples, something simple from? I mean, I like would reading. Is that a good one? Or doing puzzles
Yeah.
or those types of things?
Mhm. It is. And so for reading in particular, researchers kind of quantify it in different ways. They say, like, reading a novel is different reading than, say, reading a magazine
Mm-hmm.
or reading a pamphlet, So
Yeah.
reading a novel, I often ask people, so if you were to read a chapter of a novel and you knew that after you read that chapter, you had to explain it to someone else, how carefully would you read that chapter?
Oh, that's
So
true.
reading can be on different levels,
Mm-hmm.
right? But definitely playing chess, playing checkers,
Okay.
board games, they're really good. Um, there's a whole list of things that we can do. Even I remember seeing on the list that when we're out driving and navigating in unfamiliar areas,
Mm-hmm.
that is considered cognitive engagement, or going out and walking in unfamiliar areas, right? You're more engaged, you're more alert, you're thinking about where you're going.
That's true. Yeah, because when your
Yes,
brain, it's muscle memory when you drive the same places all the time, but when you have to go somewhere different, you're like on high alert. Like, wait, where's my exit? Where's this? Where's that? Yeah. Uh,
you are. You need a nap afterward. Yeah, that's
yeah.
the way
And then you
I.
like turn down the radio because you're like you think that'll help you. I think it's more on the concentration with
Mhm.
that. So, what does happen during a CST session, and like that can create the measurable cognitive benefits?
Yes. So, the primary principle, of course, is stimulating someone's mind. So the facilitator has activities and has ideas, so all ready to go. So every session has a different topic,
Okay.
kind of doing similar exercises within those topics. So one session is on food, one session is on art, one session on music, and then we have a creativity session. So it changes up each time. And within that, like the first thing we do in every session, I pull a news article out. So that's a big part of orientation to what's going on in the world right now. And I don't use the traumatic news. I often pull from the Good News Network. But we will read through a very short news article and I will ask the person, so what do you think about this? And then if it's just say something like a decision from the courts or something, I will ask, so if you were the judge in this case, how would you have delivered the verdict? What would you have done? What do you think? Do you think this is fair or unfair? So I'm doing things to stimulate people's minds and I'm asking their opinions and I'm asking them to come up with ideas. Right?
So that's actually, I mean, so that's something easy that a caregiver or family member can continue on with, you know,
Yes,
in
it
some ways, like
is.
having that conversation and actually listening to them, asking them
Yes.
questions.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes, and I get asked that all the time.
mhm,
What can we be doing at home, or what can we be doing throughout the week between sessions? And that's one thing that I do suggest, that if you read the paper or if you get the paper,
mhm,
you can read through a couple of the articles and discuss them. Ask for an opinion. Do a little analysis, ask for an opinion, and wait for the opinion,
yeah.
listen to it and reflect back, right? So really engage and discuss. So that is definitely something that people can do at home.
And I would say that patience, because I know it myself. Sometimes my dad, I'm like waiting and I'm like, are you going to answer or are you going to keep going on and on and on? And like sometimes it's easy to lose patience and it's hard to like be like, okay, just be present here for this moment and listen, because they usually, older people sometimes I think get forgotten in our
Totally.
society, and we forget that they have a wealth of information, a wealth of history. They know a lot of different things that we forget about, and but sometimes I think we do lose patience, myself included. Sometimes,
Yes.
asking
And
questions.
I think this is tricky for family members. I really do.
Mhm.
Like, so the people who created CST, they did a widespread research project with family members and family caregivers.
Mhm.
And you know what? It just didn't work. And you know why it didn't work? Because half of the families didn't even do the first session.
Mm.
So it's like, so number one, it's like the family caregivers are either burned out or overburdened and they can't get around to doing it. And yeah, it just, that's what happened. So it's not like, did it work or didn't work? Well, they didn't even do it because they're just kind of overwhelmed themselves. And when you're talking about patients there, absolutely, there's really something different in the dynamic within a family, right?
Mhm.
And so you do tend to lose patients more than, say, what a caregiver or what a therapist would. Hopefully, no therapist would be losing patients. I mean, a couple of things that might make it better would be to have zero distractions. So no radio on, no TV on in the background,
Mhm.
and maybe come to a table, clear the table and do it just, two people across the table from each other. Make it slightly official, or like, okay, now we're doing something.
I think
And
too
it might
what
help.
uh I think the other issue is that I think as caregivers, it's a very hard thing to accept the dementia diagnosis and know how
Mhm,
to handle it. To be able to finally be like, I need to enter their world and stop correcting
mhm,
them. If they
mhm,
say the sky is green, just go with it. You know,
mhm,
and if and I think that's what's really hard to get to that
mhm,
point
mhm,
in doing that. But it helps so much when you're able to get to that point with
mhm,
caregiving and being able to sit there and be in that moment with them and talk with them with those different
mhm,
things. Uh,
mhm.
with that, I
'Cause
found that,
it's heartbreaking too to
yeah,
see the, you know, right? To see the change.
It
I mean,
is.
I've even sometimes when I'm in someone's home, I can kind of chuckle with a married couple that have been married for over 60 years. Like I just one gentleman that I can think of, 89 years old, and his wife will take a break when I'm there and working with him one on one. His wife will be in the bedroom, and sometimes I'll ask him a question. He'll say, no, or just like, have you ever been to Paris? Or, no, no, no. And then I can hear the wife calling out, you have been 30 years ago there, right? So
Yeah,
I think it's no right or wrong answer for me. And I'm going with it and I'm doing my best to
right.
stimulate someone and we're having a great time and the mood is great. And I think it is difficult for family members to do it. You have to really know that you're going into this and no matter what is being said, the most important part of it is that you are an active or an effective listener. You're reflecting back and you're giving the gift of stimulation and your time and attention to the person.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That it is hard. Like I know it was harder for my dad to get to that accepting um,
Mhm.
with that. So, how would somebody in their 50s or 60s and they want to future proof their brain? How should you start? What can you do?
Uh, well, I think of this all the time, and I think about my own relationship with food and exercise, but definitely it just goes back to the same possibly boring diet and exercise. So, our diets, when people talk about the standard American diet, we are eating processed food, we have higher sugar and high grain. And it is best that we reduce that sugar, reduce the grain, and reduce the processed food. So there is a diet that has been trialed now. It's called the MIND diet. So
Mm-hmm.
MIND. And it is like a mix of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet.
Mm-hmm.
The DASH diet was created to lower people's blood pressure. So the MIND diet really emphasizes, vegetables and fruit. It allows you to have whole grains only and a limited amount, and very little processed food, and then little, just the tiniest bit of butter. So it says use olive oil instead of butter. For me, I have looked at all kinds of approaches to diet, and it seems like people talk about the benefits of keto, and I think yes, there are a lot of benefits, and you can really lower inflammation with keto. For me, it is too strict right now for me. I
Mm.
really love fruit and I like vegetables. And so for the MIND diet, it has been trialed, it has been researched, and even moderate adherence to that eating regime
Mm-hmm.
reduces your risk of dementia and it improves your cognition.
And
So I think
I was gonna say I believe that was researched by a hospital here near in Chicago, the
oh, really?
Rush
Mhm.
University. Yeah, medical center with that. But
Mhm.
and um, I am familiar with the Mind diet, but I think it is. Uh, we don't, as Americans, we like our fast food and processed food. But you do feel better when you don't eat as much with that. You really
Mhm.
do. You know,
Mhm.
uh, I went to Ireland like 2 years ago, and I was just like amazed at the difference in the food. Meaning, it was so good. They have laws against the process and different chemicals in the food, and it's like you didn't eat as much because it was all good food, health. Um, you know what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
It didn't have all the
Probably
chemicals.
whole foods?
Yes, that's the word
Mhm.
I'm looking for.
Mhm.
Yeah, it does make a difference with it. But it's also good to know that, yeah, scientifically, the Mind diet, they have been able to show that it does decrease the dementia
Mhm.
risk uh,
Mhm.
with that. Do you think that cognitive decline is an inevitable part of aging? Or are there other ways we can protect or strengthen the brain?
Well, in terms of like when we think of what we call normal age-related cognitive decline, so this is something just kind of widespread across society that we have seen, and we call it normal. So, in our 30s, our brains start to shrink a little bit every year. It's a very small percentage, but it does start in our 30s. And then at about age 65, 67, then it starts to shrink a little bit more every year.
Okay.
And so, how this shrinkage or this atrophy kind of manifests is through, like, we will see our information processing will be slowing down a little bit. Our word finding, our language fluency, we're not great at executive function as much as we used to be. So that's kind of it. It's not interfering with our daily lives, but we can see that we're slowed down a little bit. Maybe other people can see it. And even the people that we know in their 80s and 90s that are really sharp, they're probably not as sharp as they were 40 years ago. So there is some subtle slowing. Now, that is probably inevitable. There are probably some people that are really intentional about their health and can not slide as much. But for dementia, of course, it is not inevitable. We're almost, we almost feel like we are, like it is inevitable. We do know people in their 80s and 90s that do not have dementia. And I would hope that certainly in our 60s and 70s, it is not inevitable. And the things that we've talked about already are like the 4 lifestyle pillars of brain health that we can do to strengthen ourselves and to really protect our minds is, of course, diet, and then exercising our minds with cognitive stimulation, and then exercising our bodies with physical exercise, and then social engagement.
And I think that all 4 of those are important, but I think too, sometimes I think older adults do feel isolated sometimes and they don't
Absolutely.
socialize as much. Sometimes it's as simple as sitting outside and talking with your neighbor, with that. It is important to socialize and get that cognitive stimulation with that.
Yes, and the older you get, the more you are outliving your cohort,
Yeah.
right? Social circle really dwindles, right, when you get into your 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Mhm,
does. Why do you think so many
mhm.
people underestimate the power of structured mental stimulation? Sorry.
Yes. I think because we haven't really thought about it. It's not something that, it's something that is fairly recently known. And the research is only just coming out now about how important it is. So there was a really huge research project delivered in China, and they looked at 40,000 people over 10 years. It was a really huge trial. What they were looking at was they were just looking at people's memory. So at the start of the 10 years and at the end. And what they saw was the most important factor that gave them a good memory was diet, like we've already talked about, and really high levels of vegetables and low processed food. And then number 2, the second most important feature of the people who had good memories after 10 years was cognitive engagement. So was that exercising the mind? And the researchers were really surprised at that because they thought that number 2 might be exercise, or physical exercise, or that number 1 was. So they were surprised that exercising the mind was so high on, you know, uh, for people who had good memories at the end of 10 years. So number 1 was diet, number 2 was cognitive stimulation or exercising the mind. Number 3 was exercising the body, and number 4 was social engagement.
And I think it's even more important in these days, especially with AI and everything. It's so easy to not think these days, to make sure that you do think And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes doing things the old way is better for your brain
Mm-hmm.
with that. So speaking of that, so your website is forbetterminds.com. So,
That's right.
okay. So if somebody
Mm-hmm.
goes to your website, what can they find?
So they can find more information about cognitive stimulation therapy, and they can find some of the scientific evidence about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they can also contact me, and we can have a chat about them doing CST with me.
Okay.
So I deliver cognitive stimulation therapy through Zoom. I have clients right now in Europe and in the US and in Canada. So if you're English speaking, we can work together because I don't speak another language. And but other than that, geography is not a barrier. So if you can use Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
we can work together.
And learning Zoom is good mental stimulation, cognitive stimulation.
Yes, and you wouldn't believe the number of people that can use it. I think it really happened during the pandemic. A lot
Yeah.
of people learned how to use Zoom.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Technology is always a good one for
Hmm.
cognitive stimulation. I know for me anyway with it. So um,
Yes.
I think this is so interesting. And there's, like you said, there's simple things that we can do to help the prevention of aging. But if you do get that diagnosis of the mild cognitive impairment, again, you can kind of slow um, the progression a little bit by doing some of these
Hmm.
things with it
Hmm.
uh, for that.
Yes, you can keep your skills up. You can keep some of your mental skills up with cognitive stimulation therapy. It also is shown to really help people's mood, quality of life. And for women, it's been even shown to alleviate depression.
Oh, I could see
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah, I could see that because I think sometimes as women we feel like we have to take care of everything, and it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot
Mm-hmm.
to handle some days.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the connection that you have in this just such a rewarding and wonderful conversation
Oh,
that
well, thank you. Well, I just think it's important. I think, people need to know what they can do. And if they're in the middle of having a loved one, family member with dementia, what can they do? What are other things to do? Because you feel so helpless, so helpless, because there's just nothing they can do for you,
Mhm.
So at least there's something you could be like, all right, even if it's learning how to have that conversation, because my mom had opinions about things all the time. Still, she always did, and you'd be like, oh, okay,
Yes.
you know.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes we take our older adults for granted.
Mhm.
We push them in the background sometimes, and we shouldn't. So
Mhm.
with that, so we're gonna tell everybody the link to your website will be on with our show and everything, so people can check it out. It's very
Thank
interesting.
you.
Lots of good things on there. So thank you for joining us today. This has been so stimulating. This has been a stimulating
Ah,
conversation.
wonderful. Okay, thank you for having me, Lisa.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So I hope you all have enjoyed the conversation. So I hope you enjoyed your cup of coffee, your cup of tea, or if it's a really bad day, your glass of wine. And don't forget to leave us a review or subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we will see you next time on another episode of Patty's Place.